I want to talk about a little bit about living life in regards to your future. And I know I talk a lot about this, but you know what? My goal is to help people set goals. Because basically, if you don't have a purpose, you'll fall for anything that comes across. You know, like they say, the old saying is if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And that's the truth. And that applies to your life as well. So if you don't even have at least a basic blueprint of what you want to do within the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, when you look up, those 5 years, 10 years, 15 years have passed, and you have the same mentality and you're in the same position struggling as you were before. You just got a few years older, you got a few gray hairs, a few more wrinkles, and a few more aches and pains. And your metabolism isn't as high as it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. So now you have to make the extra effort to try to play catch up during all that time. And then on top of that, you got to worry about the regrets that you have. You got regrets piled up on top of that. And I mentioned before that, I'm on a spiritual journey and I'm trying to take you guys right along with me. So by no means necessary am I trying to say that I'm a guru and that I've reached this pinnacle of self-actualization and that I'm here to save the world. Not trying to do it, not trying to take on that position. I know my role. I'm a person just like you. It's just that I've had an experience or two in the recent past where I had to kind of rethink this whole thing. I had to reprogram myself. And some people are afraid to reprogram themselves because they don't want to disrespect the people who raised them. I'm not disrespecting my parents. They're no longer here on this earth with us. They're with us in spirit. And I don't want to disrespect my grandparents or any of the elders who are even still here to raise me. But the truth is the truth. They were human. They did the best they could with what they have. But when I got out into the world, I found out a lot of the things that I was shown was not right. And that's just the truth. Now, if some of you want to misinterpret that as disrespecting them, okay, you go ahead with that. But I'm just telling the truth. I'm trying to live the rest of my days in truth. So because of that, I grew up with the wrong programming and wound up making a whole bunch of huge mistakes based on the wrong programming. Based on my failure to be able to adapt to the world that was different from what I was told and was exposed to. Some people don't adapt very well to those changes. And because of that, you get confused, you get discouraged, you're running around thinking something's wrong with you, which 9 times out of 10 it probably is. But you don't know what direction to go. You're going to and fro. You know in the back of your mind what you should do, but you don't know how to do it. And see, that's the problem in this world. We're being told to do this and told to do that and told to do this and told to do that. But nobody's handing us a hammer, a chisel, a screwdriver, a set of pliers, or a wrench to help us build what we need to build. Nobody's giving us any tools. Nobody's giving us any tools on how to be disciplined. No one's giving us any tools on how to schedule. There's a few of us, but the majority of us have been raised up with certain routines and everything. And then when we go to a different environment, be it college or off in the military to a different culture and it's a different scene and everything, schedules get thrown off. We're not taught how to deal with unexpected situations in life. A lot of us don't have any coping skills. The only coping skills that we have is to either just ignore the whole thing or to run away from it. And that's unfortunate. I'm not saying this about everybody. I'm just talking about people who struggle through trying to find themselves. And you'll never get to know yourself until you find out what needs to be addressed. The first thing you need to do, if you want to know, the first rule that you need to find out is when you're trying to find yourself is number one, you're human and you're flawed. That's the first tool I'm going to give you. If anybody out there is going through a identity crisis, trying to figure out what direction you need to go, trying to figure out what your next move is going to be, because you've always been in a state of confusion, always running away from yourself, moving this place, moving that place. Because, see, I was there. I'm speaking from experience. Moving this place because you think there's going to be a better job and a better life. Moving this place because you think it's going to be better education and a better life. The truth is, no matter where you go, you still run into the same situations and the same problems, because it's not where you go, it's you. Now, I know this is hurting some people's feelings right now, but it's the truth. Think about it. Let's say that you were raised in New York City and decided you're going to go to college over there in Boise, Idaho. Two totally different areas, two totally different situations. Now, you had some things going on in New York that was crazy, so you figure I'll just leave the craziness in New York and go to school in this nice, quiet little town and everything will be fine. You go to Boise, Idaho, and you go to college or trade school or whatever, and find yourself in the same situations. Do you have sense enough to understand that it has nothing to do with Boise, Idaho, but you fabricate this scenario in your mind that there's something wrong with the people in Boise, Idaho, something wrong with the government in Boise, Idaho, something wrong with the economic system in Boise, Idaho. They got too many cornfields in Boise, Idaho. They got too many potato patches in I don't know, you know what I mean? I mean, you just come and you rationalize and create all these excuses. So when you finish your education, if you do finish from Boise, Idaho, you decide, you know what, I want to live in the desert. Let me go to New Mexico. So you go to Albuquerque, New Mexico, because you were offered a job in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because you didn't want to stay in Boise, Idaho, even though they did have opportunities in your field there, because you already established in your mind that Boise was such a mess. So you go down to Albuquerque, New Mexico with this new job, and you go down there and you stay with the job for a while, and then not long after that, they may have a cutback or whatever may be the case, and you lose your job. During that time, you can't maintain good relationships. Your finances are just jacked up as they were in Boise, Idaho, and New York City. All of a sudden, everything looks bad because you're going through some bad stuff. All of a sudden, Albuquerque, New Mexico is no good. Oh, it's too hot out there. I don't like being out in the desert. There's too many storms out here, and it's blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, you find fault with Albuquerque, New Mexico. Then you figure, oh, well, by this time, a good 10 years or so has passed. You have a family emergency or whatever occur in New York, and you always have that one relative that calls and tells you how you need to come home because somebody's sick. We all got that one person in the family that wants everybody just to be around them all the time, so they over-dramatize somebody else's crisis to get folks who live out of town to come home and stay home and be around them. And I'll talk about that in another audio. So family crisis occurs, and instead of you getting a round trip ticket to Albuquerque, New Mexico, you throw everything in storage, whatever the case may be, try to sell the house or whatever, if you get one, and you go back to New York to help this sick relative, to help the crisis, whatever. Then you decide, oh, well, this is home. When you first get there, you're all home. You feel so good because you're home. Now, mind you, you left there because it was a mess. You guys see where I'm going with this? So by the time the sick relative or whatever family crisis goes through, that sense of homesickness and home war, you don't feel that anymore, and you're ready to go again. I'm saying this because I know the feeling that people like myself, as well as myself, just running and running and running. So when you're in New York and you home and you're thinking everything is cool, it's a matter of time when as soon as the crisis is over with, all of a sudden you done found fault with New York again, and you're ready to go to Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm naming all these places not because I live there. I'm just doing this as a hypothetical as far as the places are concerned, but the concept is still the same. It did apply to my life. But the thing is when you lived in New York before, when you lived in Boise, Idaho, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and now you're going to Wilmington, you ran into the same set of problems in 3 different places, 3 totally different types of environments, but you ran into the same situations. What's the common denominator? Some of y'all who took math and were paying attention in math class, when you had to learn how to simplify fractions, the first thing you had to do was find the least common denominator. You had to find the common denominator in order to simplify that fraction. You were the common denominator as to why things didn't work out in these three different places. New York was the numerator, same problems. Boise, Idaho was the numerator, same problems. Albuquerque, New Mexico, numerator, same problems. Wilmington, North Carolina, numerator, same problems. The common denominator is you. The problems that kept occurring no matter where you went was you. You never addressed them. You never acknowledged there were any problems, but instead you projected your frustrations onto your environment. You need to work on yourself. I'm taking a moment to sip some water to have you think about that. You are running from yourself. And I see people now in their 40s, 50s, and 60s have been running from themselves since they were in their 20s, and they still trying to run. Gray hairs, wrinkles, medical conditions, aches and pains, struggling finances, families, and all. And then they turn around and they're programming their family members to do the same thing. By their example, they're teaching their children and their grandchildren and everybody else that it's okay to run when things don't go your way. Because that's basically what it is. Everything's fine, you're happy, you're great, you're wonderful, as long as everything falls in line for you where you live. But once things get a little hectic for more than one day, all of a sudden, there's something wrong where you were. Where you live didn't change. It was that way when you got there. And it's going to be that way when you leave. It's what you do with your experience while you're there. If you're taking those same attitudes and the same ways and the same way that you handle things from city to city to city to city and run into the same problems, it's not the city's fault. It's you. So the next time you decide to run somewhere, first of all, get yourself a mortgage or something that requires for you to stay there for a while so you won't have to run. So that way it'll be difficult for you to leave. Get yourself a good paying job. Get yourself some connections that'll be not so easy to break. Join a church, a temple, or a mosque. Form some friendships. Develop some strongholds where you live. That way when that idea comes into your head to leave, it won't be so easy to leave. Join a club. Get familiar with your neighbors. Go back to school. Develop some strongholds. Develop some relationships that you know require a certain amount of commitment. Because all this bouncing around, it just shows that you don't want to commit. And you don't want to commit because you don't know what you want out of a relationship with anybody. And you don't know what you want out of a relationship with anybody because you don't know who you are. It all goes back to you. So once you find out who you are, you're not going to be quick to be running all over the place. You're not. You're going to accept your situation for what it is. You're going to make the necessary changes. You're going to do the spiritual and emotional work so you can deal with your issues and your problems that you are running away from. And you are not going to want to move. Trust me. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. I've spoken long enough on this, but I hope this brings some clarity to some people. And share this with somebody that you know that's been running and still running and running into situations because somebody needs to stop them before they get stopped. It's not a good thing and it's not healthy. Just saying.